So now we're seeing this. We saw this hold. We talked about wokeness being a cult here. We talked about it being an illiberal religious ideology, like quasi-religious ideology. But now it seems like the anti-woke movement. This is what I've always called the orgy of overcorrections, right? It is the
You
orgy
have
of
such a
overcorrections.
way with words.
Oh, thank you, milady. No, but it really is. I mean, you have this. You have, for example, all of this Islamic terrorism, and then you had a backlash against it. And they tried to correct for it. Then you had the regressive left to correct for the regressive left. You had this whole sort of anti this new conservatism and the alt-right thing, and then Trumpism came out of that. In reaction to Trumpism, you had this woke movement, which got crazier and crazier and more illiberal and became fascist in its own way, to the extent that Noam Chomsky had to sign a letter condemning it. Okay, and now to correct for that, now we have this anti-woke thing that's becoming just as much of a religion, and they are now canceling people and doing dog piles. What did we call those pylons on social media and things like that? On just doing the same thing that they hated on the other side. So what is this? Where does this go, Armin Navabi?
I mean, it's very interesting because let's just be clear. When we talked about the problems with the woke, we're not talking about the left, okay? And some people criticize us for even referring to it as woke, while they themselves called it woke scold or something else, right? Whatever you want to call it. We have there are some forces within the left which is crazy, and to give credit to the left recognizes that, like they see it and they're like, yeah, these people are insane, right? And most of the left is not like that. We always have said that, right? The debate that we had was this fringe group on the left, how much influence and control they have, even though we recognize that they're a minority in the fringe. The debate between me and Ali was always that whether or not they have, even though they're fringe, whether they have a lot of influence or they have a little influence, right? It's not that we accuse most of the left of being like that, but I was arguing that they have a lot of influence and that they have gone mainstream, right? And some of the things that a lot of people also on the left seem to recognize with the woke side of the left was they seem a lot like the racists and the homophobes on the other side. Like they seem to be focusing on the things that they're, a lot of people on the other, the crazies on the right believe in, right? Which is interesting because now, if you look at how crazy the anti-woke has become, they also seem to become a lot closer to. There's two elements to it, right? We have the anti-woke forces that seem a lot like they have the attributes that we usually associate with the woke side. They get triggered. They want to cancel things, but these are not new. Like it seemed like we're suggesting that the anti-woke is something new. This was always there, right? If you want to think about it from a left-leaning and right-leaning perspective, if you look at it historically, the right was always in favor of cancel culture and getting triggered. We were just not used to it coming from the left, right? But this is mostly a right-wing thing. I mean, when it comes to movies that are too sexy or video games that are supposed to be responsible for apparently all the crimes that need to be canceled, anything that is too LGBT friendly that triggers the right, and historically also when it comes to the most oppressive, the most brutal, the most aggressive ways of canceling people, not canceling them by throwing them out of like social media, but canceling them by putting a few bullets in their head while they're sleeping. That's mostly a right-leaning thing, like historically as well, right? That doesn't mean that we don't get to complain about the woke, okay? I just want to say that this whole a lot of people who jumped on saw what's happening in these fringe movements that are happening in the left, and they saw that, okay, yes, they're fringe, but they seem to be having a lot of influence, and they're calling it out. the people who jumped on the bandwagon, because it became so popular, it kept on growing and growing. And now what we're seeing is that the people that are jumping on that bandwagon are the people that are actually they have those problems that the left is supposed to fight against, rightfully so. So what we're saying is that the left is responsible for a lot of movements that have made the world a better place, right? Gay rights movement, trans rights movements, women rights movements, protection of minorities. These were movements that the right doesn't have these, right, under its belt, right? There's not much from right-wing politics that has been contributed to the world that we could be like, ooh, yes, this is a major achievement. But the left has that. This is why the reason why we criticize the left is because we think the left is worth defending, right? I don't see that much, like it's supposed, like the rights. Okay, I'll get back to that later. But the woke was, because these are popular movements, because they got a lot of popularity, the woke jump on the bandwagon, and it was doing overcorrection. And now this overcorrection, correcting that as overcorrection, is being overcorrected by anti-SJWs. But the thing is these anti-SJWs are not correcting the woke. They're also they're trying to correct things that shouldn't be corrected. They are correcting the left, the good, the genuine good movements that coming out of the left. That's what they're actually trying to correct, right? So as much as we say, like, for example, people on the woke, they find things that are not racist and they accuse it of being racist. They find things that are not transphobic and they accuse it of being transphobic. They find things that is not homophobic and they accuse it of being homophobic. As much as we want to call those things out, what the anti-SJW has become is people that are genuinely racist and people that are genuinely homophobic, people that are genuinely transphobic, and they're trying to use us pushing back against this overcorrection as a way to provide a cover for their racism and their transphobia and their homophobia when they get called out, to be like, oh, this is just the woke coming after me. Like, no, it's not. You're just a goddamn racist. Susanna, you wanted to say something?
Well, I disagree. I think there are flavors to it, right? I don't think all of the people who criticize, there are flavors to it. So I say critical social justice, because it's usually what I'm most critical of is social justice that has a critical theory flavor to it. So I think, broadly speaking, I think you're overgeneralizing. I think, broadly speaking, there are two camps. There are the people who are trying to use your language, correct the left, are people who are just like, have always been conservatives, are conservatives, and they have a broader battle against the left itself, and they're just jumping upon these obvious weak points, these obvious absurdities to push their agenda. There's a lot of that. Let me finish. But then there's also a lot of anti-SJWs. I don't even know if they would characterize themselves using that label, who are just, well, before Dave Rubin made it a cringy term, like classical liberals or old school liberals. Like, they're not trying to correct the left or leftism itself. Like, they're trying to make it better. They're trying to course correct. There's a difference, right? So I don't think you can say that everyone who criticizes social justice is actually racist, is actually pushing for racism. There's a lot of variety. It's very heterogeneous who is pushing forward this dialogue of criticism about these various ideologies that people are finding to be counterintuitive. And to touch on something that you said earlier in terms of, how, the woke are very similar to the right in many ways, I think one of the broadest similarities is a very puritanical culture. And they just come, this puritanism just comes in different forms, different flavors. Like, obviously, well, maybe not so obviously, for the right, it generally tends to be a religious conservatism. For the left, it's more of a social purity, in a way, not to offend or to be. I mean, it seems like so overly used, but to be politically correct, to not be offensive. This incessant demand for purity is what drives forward, I think, the most toxic aspects of those different flavors of Puritanism.
Hey guys, if you want to join these streams live, get your comments and questions read by Ali and Armin and the guests, and most importantly, to get full access to the full video versions of all these episodes, become a patron. Link in the description below.